I have a request. I cannot be on a panel and Mr. Ramachandran be in the audience. I request you, sir, kindly join the panel. So here are some generic questions which might be of interest to the crowd at large. So there's nothing too specific, more generic. And again, like I said a few times, please feel free to chip in from the audience. I think there are quite a few superstars, like I said, in the crowd. So Navneet, love to start with you. What emerging technologies are expected to have a significant impact on the electronic sector in India? Love to hear from you.
Sure. So I'll probably have a little bit bias towards the computer industry because that's where I come from. And I've been in this computer industry for the last 25, almost touching 30 years. And there's a huge evolution which is now more like a transformation in this industry. So when I came into this industry in the early 90s, PC was getting more and more adopted, and simple applications like word processing and spreadsheets, that was the primary use of a PC. And you see the evolution and what kind of things PCs are doing now, especially during the pandemic, where it was do everything from home, and the kinds of usages PC had. And then you compare, the demand for PCs back in the early 90s, the global demand versus where it is today. It's a huge differential there. So as the product technology, evolves, the way people use the technology also evolves, and that creates a huge demand. So if you ask me, how the technology is going to change the electronics industry, so obviously the new use cases, right now, if you think about going forward, so the most catchy buzzword now is the AI. Ever since ChatGPT became public, more than 100 million users within a couple of weeks started using ChatGPT. Whereas if you go back, it took several decades for PC to become a $1 billion install base. So now technology adoption is so much faster. So going forward, the usage, how humans start to adopt AI, or as the digital transformation continues to grow in every sphere, tremendous amount of data is going to get generated, right? And that data will become more valuable as you have, more insights that the data will provide you to take decisions, find opportunities for your businesses. So obviously, there is going to be a huge computation power required to process the data, store the data, draw insights from the data, and all supported by Copilot, which could be an AI. So, it creates a huge set of possibilities for the industry to look at the design of new products, and the scale of the devices, right? So, the mobile phone, in India we have almost touching 1 billion users. So as the demand increases, you need more capacity. So industry is going to face that challenge of creating those capacities. So in other words, to summarize my point, that as technology goes through these points of inflection, there is definitely a scale which creates opportunities. There is, new niches of use cases which create opportunities for startups to enter the space with a special niche, and that can scale up. So, the field is wide open as we go forward.
Thanks, Navneet. It's so interesting what you said. The company I'm from, Avalon, we're into electronic manufacturing services, and we're used to, industrial products or medical products or mobility products. But today, the products coming into us for manufacturing of, for farm, for so many new areas. So I'm sure we're in for some exciting times where technology is certainly going to change the way we work and the way we live in general. The next question is about key challenges and opportunities in terms of supply chain management and sourcing of electronic components in India. There's nothing more important than that, and I do feel Josh would be a perfect person to talk about this.
Thank you, Shamil. So I think, clearly there are multiple components of, when you take any electronic part, regardless of use cases, which both Shamil and Nandi talked about, all of these things have a common thread, right? You have semiconductors, you have displays, you have PCBs, you have electromechanical components, you have mechanical components. So all of these things have, depending on the technology application, they have a certain roadmap. All of them don't have to be in the most advanced semiconductor node. Everybody gets very excited of sub 10 nanometer, while most of the stuff can be done at 65 nanometers or even lesser in many cases, right? So I think it's sometimes I'll say the practicality of which technology you want to invest in, depending on the analysis. So I'll say the key challenges today is, first of all, an understanding on mapping. What do you want, sort of to invest in India, and that's something which Shamil and I and Navneet and others, deal with every day. So what do you invest, for the next year? What do you invest in the next 3 years for? So I think that mapping is very, very important. The second, I think, is then, how do you make sure that invested technology is successful? And so a lot of people misunderstand this industry is not just tech intensive, it is also very working capital intensive. So, so Selvam said you are from finance, so maybe you can help us with that question later about working capital is really pushing us, to the limit, because a lot of the customers ask us for very long payment times, right? So and all of these electronic components are not cheap, right? So this working capital understanding is very, very important, and clearly so that you are able to plan the, your cash flow in a much better manner. So I think this is very important to understand and really plan for the future. The third really is, end of the day, execution. See, I think, and it's sometimes, we say it's, it rained today. It's supposed to rain occasionally in June, and so what happened because it rained? Well, the power was shut down. Well, the power is going to get shut down sometimes in India when it rains, especially. Okay, this is an unseasonal rain. I think thanks for whoever bought the rain in. So the visitors who bought this rain in respite to the heat, but you have to plan, right? People say that the distance from right, Sashi, the airport to our factory is 1.5 hours. Then I'll say that as a drone flies, crow flies, whatever you want to say, but not as a truck moves, right? So you have to plan for that the truck logistics is going to take 4 hours. The customs clearance is going to take, okay, I don't want to say anything, but it's got a lot better, trust me. We've done so it's about planning, right? It's about planning and giving this predictability, right? Because one of the ministers I respect a lot, he said that, Josh, do you want this to be cleared in one shift, 2 shifts, 3 shifts? I said, sir, we just want predictability. So I want to put something there and says, it was 8 hours, it is 8 hours. It's okay, we just need a plan. And it's important for us as business leaders, when you are doing global supply, these SLAs are very important to maintain. Okay, because once you plan something in your term sheet or whatever, you need to honor that, right? Because you have contracts and other obligations to do that. So please plan when you're executing all of these things. And it's very, very important. And I can tell you the experience of the government understands this. The government understands that the velocity or the speed of this business is increasing. The speed of commerce is increased now in India. And especially when you get into global accounts, global supply, this is very, very important. So I think there are challenges. Clearly, I won't say we don't have, but I think it's about us planning through all these 3 things to make sure that we are successful long term.
Thank you, Josh. I think Selva might be the best person for this question.
Not sure, honestly. You didn't answer the question yet.
What are the opportunities and challenges for India in implementing technologies in electronic manufacturing in terms of global competitiveness?
So the answer remains the same, honestly. I am an odd man out actually, just sitting
So,
along with the
another-
results.
yeah, Selva, I mean, in terms of competitiveness in India, your company too has plants
Sure.
in different regions in the world. So something India does is something you're really privy to and what you're probably instrumental. So what is it that is going well and what is it perhaps which is still a gap?
Okay. Truly, I'm a little proud of explaining really what we have done
Sure.
in the 15 years time frame. NCR, not in capital region. It's earlier it was a national cash register. Today we are the world leader in ATM manufacturing. So that's, we service ATMs. One side, I would say the technology is fast developing, which makes us feel we may not be there maybe a decade later. Currencies, probably like stamp collection, currency collection may become a reality. Having said, the statistics sometimes actually motivates us. Like today, the M3, what we call the money circulation, is much better than pre-demonetization or even pre-COVID also. So parallelly, maybe the growth rate is not matching the digital payment, but still the hard currency circulation is improving. Thanks to DBT, that's a direct payment mechanism adopted by the central government. The inclusion level is much bigger today. Every village, every panchayat, there is a need for an ATM. So therefore, we are growing. 15 years back, the unit was set up actually just to cater to India requirement. And almost 70% of the components were imported from China. And the remaining, don't assume it is from local, imported from Europe or US. Okay. So that was the scenario. And today we are at around 60%. We have local sourcing. Thanks to certain norms introduced by the central government, particularly under PPP, that is basically asking 50% of the local content to be in any public sector buying or quasi-government buying. So that helps. Where we are struggling is basically still the ecosystem not getting developed, particularly in supply chain. As you rightly mentioned, the working capital, biggest challenge. The lead time, so connected. The reality is there are something like 50 to 70 weeks lead times. We place order, get the component, by the time the customer changes the spec or he upgrades. And even to a certain extent actually on the logistics front, sending a machine to US port is much easier, but sending a machine from Chennai to Mumbai port, from Mumbai, because we have to save 10-15 days lead time, that is a bigger challenge. So maybe I would have been a right choice sitting there and asking questions because we go through, sorry. We go through a lot of challenges, and also only hope I would say probably our presentation of 2026. Okay, so when the ecosystem gets developed, probably we will be better off. But today, if you ask, one side actually there are practical challenges. Maybe that is the cost what we are paying, being an early bird. We set up the industry maybe 15-20 years back. The other thing is actually, maybe sorry to say, give a counter view. PLI helps, incentives helps, but it should not be counterproductive for an early bird. Maybe we would initiate some sessions with the chambers. We would like to represent to the government. When somebody is operating at 29% of the capacity utilization, government should not give $20 billion capacity. There has to be selective. So we started interacting quite aggressively with the MeitY, because once the GO comes, it will take at least 10 years for them to again review and correct it. So it is more of fear, I would say, like what we are going through. Not only PLI, even the local content. Unless there is an ecosystem developed first. For example, like actually how Israel done it for their defense. Maybe 20 years, everything was undertaken by the government. They developed the ecosystem for defense equipments. Gradually it moved to private sector. Even we have our own experience like steel industry, for example, BHEL. So these are, energy production. These are all something which government undertook initially, then handed over to private sector. But today, I don't know whether it is relevant, but maybe all timers we are thinking like government should support in that manner, so that that ecosystem gets developed, so that we are even today assemblers. No shame in telling that we are only assemblers. Okay, there is no big fun in exporting 92% and importing 72%. Okay, so having said, we are proud of our other infra systems, like or support systems, I would say. Today, the amount of skilled labor we are getting at an optimized cost, that is what is making us survive, or rather grow. And in right perspective, if I have to explain, probably we had 6-7 factories across the world. Initially, they found in terms of cost, quality, delivery, India is better. They closed a factory in US. Then they closed a factory in Europe. Then they closed a factory in China. We never imagined. Today, the support system helps quite a lot, but the supply chain ecosystem should develop. Maybe sitting here, there could be a lot of supplier industry for me, but I do not know. So that is what exactly I think this forum will help, and probably going forward, we will be better off. A lot of hopes.
Selvam, you said no background, but you've given us all plenty of stuff to think over. At least 3 more sessions worth of content, right? Thank you. I appreciate it. This is Mr. Ramachandran's extreme strong area. How important is collaboration between academia, industry, and government with regards to the electronic sector? And I think you're involved with so many chambers, so many forums. I can't think of anybody better.
Thank you. I think it's like, Carrie, you were surprised to be invited. I'm surprised to be invited here again. Yeah, it's you're from that area in any case. See, it's extremely important that the industry works with academia, because earlier, at our heydays, everything moved slow. Customer wrote us a nice letter, we replied in a week. Then, our people supplied in another month. Everything was very nice. We could go home and sleep peacefully. That time's passed. Technology changes every day. So, but then, for every industry to have intensive research on what they're doing is not practically feasible. So you have the academia doing all that, and industry should support and work very closely. I think it succeeded well in Chennai IIT Tech Park, and I think now there are lots of tech parks are being set up. So it's very important. Now we talked about AI. Suddenly it sprang on us in terms of. But then from the industry, for us to visualize and use it effectively, that's going to take a while. Software guys may, take it up much quickly, but people like us in the manufacturing industry, it's going to take a while to understand, apply it. But then there, the academia can come to the rescue in terms of, suggesting ways of doing it. So this is, in fact, we are now trying through CII to work with Anna University, both in terms of syllabus as well as in terms of, they have now agreed to let students spend 6 months as an intern in an industry. Hopefully it will be made compulsory, we are just pushing for that. That would help, and we are also pushing for the professors to spend some time in summer, but they are not buying that idea yet. So we will see how it comes. But in future, academia will play an extremely important role in the industry. I think we need to work very closely in that area. But then overall, I think what George said and what Ms. Silvam said, we are actually skirting one fundamental issue here, is that the whole of our society is based on our inherited very strong British bureaucracy, and we are not kind of spending enough time to break that. See, whatever you build, if this bureaucracy stays, it's not going to work effectively. Now, none of you will know that. In fact, in India, it's not the semiconductor was not there. At some point of time, India had a better semiconductor industry than China. I don't think any one of you know it. Bell had a very strong semiconductor manufacturing. In fact, I used to work for Meltron. We set up a fab in Nasik. Now, those days, I think you guys are lucky. You talked about customs, they are way better now. Those days, the epoxy for molding the chip, it would stay in customs for 10 days and the shelf life was 5 days. So you can imagine, so how do you, actually our sourcing guys will be in tears all the time because half their consignment will be lost. I think today you guys are very lucky, way, way better off. But as George said, it is not adequate, and that's not possible by our, talking about a lot of lofty things. It has to come from a level where we break this bureaucracy and do something about it. At the top level, yes, a lot of nice things are being said, and we have reached some big level in ease of doing business. It's fine, but at the working level, this has to be brought about, and so that somebody has to seriously work. Our associations have a responsibility to constantly alert the government and get this done. Otherwise, think what you said is very difficult to break because people at that level, see in India, government and government departments play an enormous role in how you run your industry. We may like it, we may not like it, that's a ground reality. So I think that has to be reformed. For that, we have to become a efficient industry, and I would say that people who can cope up with the present industry. The other one point which is probably not connected with this is, we were talking, China did this because in the way they developed and not because their labor was cheap. They're probably almost 2.5 times our wages now, but they did it because one, they worked very hard in their universities and their IPR levels are very high. Second, they automated their industry. It was not, China's production was not because it was labor intensive and they scored in the world. They automated it. Today, Chinese industries are a lot more automated than in US or any other place. We have to learn to automate. See, today in India, maybe I'm a biased person, but the point is, when we go to an industry to suggest automation, we always are hesitant because in India, cost of money is high. So there is always a reluctance to, unless it goes directly into your production, people are not willing to invest money. But then that's killing the long-term objective. So I think one is automation, second is of course adapting technology and working, as you said, with the academia and institutions and work with them very closely. I think third I would say is association must constantly work with the government to break the bureaucracy and make it responsive to today's needs. And it was okay in the past. So that's would be my
Thanks, sir. Even without any prior notice, you have abundance of knowledge to share with all of us. We're kind of reaching almost the time to conclude. This is the last question, and I'll address it to you, Navneet, if it's okay. How can startups and small businesses contribute to the electronic sector in India?
Yeah, I think, again, if I speak from the computer industry standpoint, and then you can probably generalize this to across most electronic products. So first, if anybody has any interest in getting into the electronics industry for the first time, obviously you have to do a due diligence, fact finding on what is it that the industry needs. Right? So you basically, if you explode any product, you can see all the components that are out there. You can find hundreds of thousands of different kinds of commodities and items and parts. And then you can say, okay, which ones can I manufacture here, right? As an SME, I have limited resources, skill, money, capital. Where can I come in? That could be a good way to start, but I would caution you that before you make that judgment, you should not make a random selection. You have to understand the flow. So you start with the final, who's going to use, who's going to make the end product. You start from there and you work backwards. When you do that, chances are that you will find that whoever is making the end product is not putting those thousands of components within their factory. They are getting the sub-assemblies made within their ecosystem, and they're putting it together in their final assembly plant. So if you pick something at random and then you start manufacturing, chances are that it might go outside of India only to come back to India. So you have to follow the flow. And I think a good reference to that would be if you go back to the automobile industry, where it was 30 years ago. It started with final assembly, and then the MSME wanted to get in. So as automobile ancillaries, some startup company would take one small component, it could be a metal stamping. They started manufacturing that for one OEM. And then gradually, as the industry grew, your knowledge about the industry grew, your capabilities grew, your financial strength grew. You will expand to subsystems, sub-assemblies, broaden your portfolio. And today, those companies which started 30, 40 years ago, they are big players now. They're making sub-assemblies for automobiles, complete subsystems. Right? So I think the electronics industry is in that kind of a threshold right now. There is enough space for, enough room for everybody. MSMEs, large companies. I think we heard that most of these electronic components require significant investments. So for MSMEs, that may be out of reach. But then you see, okay, is there anything in the subsystem or a module where I can fit in? A lot of mechanical parts, cases, injection moldings, wiring harnesses, packaging. Packaging is a huge opportunity. Electronics industry typically spends a lot more on packaging than other industries. So you can look at that. And then the other area to look at is how can you support an OEM manufacturer in their manufacturing environment. So we do leverage a lot of local services across the board. You can see things like cafeteria, transportation for our employees, all the way to knowledge related services that we source locally. We have partnered with, just as an example, we have partnered with a startup, IIT Madras alumni. They developed a virtual reality solution for us for training our operators in a virtual environment. We have a lot of local partners who help us in our automation, industrial automation. And then, for supporting the factory, plant and equipment maintenance and all that, we rely on local vendors and suppliers. So there's a huge opportunity there also for MSMEs to support OEMs in the electronics industry. And then you as you start partnering with OEMs, you understand their needs better, and you can broaden your portfolio of services that you can bring to the table. So that's how I would sum up. Thank you.
Thank you, Navneet. Like I said, we've kind of run out of time. Any quick questions? We might have a chance to ask any panelists one or two questions. Yes, sir.
We are to smart classroom, smart panels. There is a product called OPS. OPS means what is happening is when we are reporting as a whole unit, when we are trying to bring it as a component, so each component is there. That is one thing. Second thing is customers don't understand whatever we say. That is one thing. Second thing is there is so much of gap between whatever we are explaining technically about the product. Interactive panel is an interactive mode that does not include everything is. Basically, they say it is. So they want to classify and bring under 28 companies. Whereas we separate the schools and colleges. Okay, they offer. So much of gap in the classrooms and especially we need some concrete advice to the government. The government can work with the customs.
Ramachandran sir is close to the government.
No, I think you should really approach it through associations. I remember many associations.
Yeah, in CA.
Yeah, really, or you send me a note, the gentleman at Delhi CIA is active in the, I can just check this.
But sir, maybe I think IACC has maybe more specific voice.
Fair enough, but no, in this particular case, we know the
I think we
support, but this is perfect content for that readiness assessment that SIA and IACC is putting on. Things like this, these are the reasons why we're gonna be ready or not ready in India. And so these are the pain points that we need to hear, that need to come out in this assessment. So that way we can work as the USG with the Indian government to say, it's not business friendly, it's not transaction friendly, here are the things we think you should do to improve the overall climate.
But I think, Shamil, I think at least from electronics, I think we've done quite a bit of things, right, Sashi? I think we can route it through Ramchandran sir, and Carrie will take his support on this. So.
And happy to put that in on the
Well, it's free work. Sujay? Okay. So Sujay does that. Sujay will be doing this for other state now. You can
So I appreciate your question because it's not only your specific product or a smart product, but being a manufacturer, we get exposed to a lot of different customers' issues very similar to yours. I'm sure it's. Yes, Thiru.
I think one of the areas that you see is when you make electronics, and obviously power electronics is another area where I see growth happening. More and more of the EMS companies getting into power electronics, learning them, doing them better. One area that's adjacent, where India has a lot of strength, needs a lot more attention, is embedded software. If suppose a component is not available and you use a different component, it happens to be a processor. If you already have a very good understanding of the embedded electronics, if you did it yourself, then it becomes a piece of cake. Otherwise, it's a no-no. Don't even go there. Production doesn't happen. You're not optimizing. Plenty of opportunity to optimize if power electronics, embedded software could be brought closer to the electronics industry. Any idea?
Very relevant to, I think here we are dominated by a lot of big heavy duty manufacturers, but on the services end, it's very pertinent question on services in those lines.
I think it's this whole design in India, right? I think it's clearly an opportunity to look at the strengths which India has. I mean, it's not just embedded software, it's also mechanical design. Right here in China, there's so much design which happens. So I think I agree, embedded software is an area which actually India is not necessarily very volumetric in it. You have some specific guys, and if you hire them, train them, they disappear. It's true. In a few months, But yeah, I think we should probably put it under the theme of design in India, if we can. I think clearly India is very interested in that. Atmanirbhar Bharat is about having the capability in India, and not just build to print. Type of work. So I think this can be definitely a theme we can explore. I don't know whether we want to include that in Carrie's assessment report, but we can. I think. What do you think, Ramchandran sir? Spend the next couple of weeks, put that together. So all people there.
A lot of people from here, and he's also right.
I know.
There are few, and they move so fast, it's speed of light.
Although if we can think about, the incentive schemes that government is offering, including PLI, how much credits do you get for, software, firmware?
The IT,
I think it does give you some points. So you do have some incentives for using local software.
actually you can build on that. Actually, underneath this IT hardware PLI 2.0 has design of processor. So we can sort of build on that idea. It's quite a bit. I don't know, it was 2 or 3% of COGS.
Fantastic.
So
Any opening?
It's 4 and 7.
okay.
Yeah, particularly TCS contract, base level contract, they just got, they applied for 7%.
Wow.
Sir, this take is for Ramchandran sir, and of course others may join. Sir, you brought out very relevant, the understanding by the customs and the bureaucracy, the adoption, which is, I just want to bring one small example which has happened in the last 10 months. We are mentoring startups, and one of our mentored startup imported for testing purposes certain modems, and it was released by air. It was released free of duty, and then it was used for testing. Then for development, then 90% was imported by ship to Madras port here. It was held up saying that 20% duty you have to pay. So they based their decision to import it on the first consignment which was imported for testing, and this got stuck. And for 10 months, sir, by the time we finally we had to fight out, and then Shekhar was wondering how come I was visiting Chennai so often, and now we got it, somehow we resolved it, but the technology is out of date, we are not able to even use it in the market. Now, so this kind of a thing, I think this is where the realization, the role of IACC and other associations are very, very important. And the second thing, sir, you mentioned about the education. It's good that Anna University you have started, but this has to go everywhere. The new education policy has provided a scope and the overarching fund, but then physically we have to see a mechanism, a bridge, where we can get these industry experts to come to the universities and the institutions, and the reverse to go and do their training or internship in the industry. The one suggestion, sir, let some of these industries, including Avalon, sir, you can start thinking about setting a center of excellence in some select institutions, and that is where the work can go faster. This is submitted to the panel, and of course is not necessarily for answer but then for follow-up, including association. Thanks a lot for this opportunity.
Okay, I hope you got a lot of food for thought, food for our stomachs also, which are waiting for us. Just before we head out, we'd like to sincerely thank our panelists, and I'd call on Mr. Ramachandran to give them a little memento from our side. I'll start with Sujay. Navneet Kejriwal. Josh Folger. And finally for Mr. Silva. Thank you all. You've been a wonderful audience. Yes, perfect. Okay. Mr. TNV to Mr. Ramachandran. Thank you. So you've been a wonderful audience. Thanks again to the panelists, and hopefully some of the stuff we spoke about takes us to further improved ecosystem for electronics and semiconductors. Thank you.